So let's jump right into the haircut, and then we'll talk kind of back and forth regarding blue and how we're utilizing the product conceptually with this haircut. So before we begin, I just want to kind of show you the divisions of these panels within the anatomy of the skull. So the first thing is I've got a slight offset part starting from the left high brow, and that is working back to the center top of the head. From that ending point at the center top of the head, it drops down with a vertical line, and it's kind of clipped forward and over so you can't see it really well. But it's a vertical line subdividing the side from the back just behind the ear at the mastoid process. And I've got the exact same division of panels between the right side and the back left, or I'm sorry, the back right. And then in the back, we've got the back of the head really just split into two in equal proportions. And then I've got a basic nape section dropped out and a really kind of like horizontal diagonal line really wrapping the anatomy of the skull. So to kind of paint a picture of where we're going and where I'm pulling my inspirations from, if you look at Garen again and you look at his body of work, one of the bigger transformations that he did back in the 90s was really on Linda Evangelista, who was a huge supermodel then, when he chopped all her hair off into what we would call like this little box bob shape, where the nape is collapsed down, essentially cut away, and then we've got this bit of a line coming up and over the disconnected nape, and that line will then continually transfer through to the front, and I'm going to reference the corner of my mannequin's lips as far as where that line should fall. And again, I'm going to be working with this offset part, and then we'll begin to come back into the face and open it up utilizing the razor, cutting some short to long pieces, just so when we're finished we can kind of push this hair away. So we'll have this kind of disconnected nape that will be collapsed in with this line veiling up and over it, and we're going to be cutting it with the razor and be utilizing it in a very, very loose kind of format, but with a lot of technical kind of foundations behind it to create this shape, this texture, and the movement within the hair. So the hair has been prepared with our Essentials shampoo and conditioner, and the Essentials shampoo and conditioner are not here, but it would be within the blue line. Everything within the blue line of blue is the Essential line, and that is going to be really for all hair types, the shampoo and conditioner, male, female, you know, color-treated hair, natural hair, and it's going to essentially cleanse the hair, condition the hair, and what we call a very kind of like daily format. If you're looking for more moisture or the essence of rebuilding the hair a bit more so, you might jump into our green line, which is our deluxe line, which is really a bit more reparative. And then we also have a color shampoo and conditioner called Primary Color Shampoo and Conditioner. So I'm going to raise the head level up, getting it to roughly high chest level. And then we're going to take the chin and we'll drop it downward. So chin down, nose now pointing towards the ground. We'll lock the head position into place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the back of the nape section and I'm going to split it into two. And this is a bit of, I want to say, an older technique that I've played with for years. It's something that I haven't done in a while. It's a bit more of what we would call a condensed cutting technique, meaning where we're working with a larger section of hair in one go and making our way through it, developing our shape and our technique. So really, in essence, to do this, the grooming of the hair is extremely important. So you can see that I've got it split into two, this right in half, and then what I'm doing is I'm taking the hair and I'm beginning to naturally elevate the hair out from the section line at the top. It's about the same kind of projection or the same elevation as I would to cut almost like a classic graduated bob. But I'll be picking all of the hair up underneath it as well, grooming it into that section. And then I'll be taking this section and just pinching it together ever so lightly for control. So you can see my finger angle is now mirroring that section angle. And that's going to help just work as a guide, similar to like how my comb angle would mirror my section angle if I was to be working under the comb with the scissor cutting a bob. But I'm utilizing again, this finger angle as well as that section angle to replace my now stick razor, and I'm going to put that stick razor really flat to the shaft, and I'm going to just begin to lightly skim over this top layer of hair, and I want to go short enough yet long enough where this hair is not going to poke straight out, and it's going to be just soft and seamless. I'm going to make my way through this section. So I'm starting at the top, which is actually like creating the weight line. And as I begin to move my way down and through the hair, because of this natural elevation up, it's going to keep a little bit of softness just on that bottom of the nape, in which I can come back in and clean out. You can see now the hair that I've removed, and you can see that it's definitely soft, but it's not blowing out and extremely shattered. And now you can see the quick end result is just a very soft fitted little graduated shape. Definitely longer in at that section line and shorter into that nape. But now as I begin to expand this shape out, you can definitely begin to see some of that internal kind of texture. Again, I want to make sure though, when I did that, my length choice, I really wanted to look at the bend of the hair stemming out from the section line, making sure that it's got enough length that when I come up and underneath it, that this will just melt effortlessly into the shape of the skull. So now we'll come back in and we'll do the exact same thing on the opposing side. Again, grooming is key. So I'm going to pick this up and make sure you don't get my elbows. That's for me. So elevating it up, similar to how it would be cut, like if I was to be cutting a graduated bob, same kind of elevation point. Then we'll take it, we'll pinch it together, and then I can reference again the length, and then I'm going to come back in with the flat of the blade, and the flat of the blade is now referencing that section angle, and I'm going to begin just naturally lightly skimming right through it. And it's kind of a broader stroke. It's not too short and too closed. And that stroke is the up and down motion of the razor. And just making my way all the way through that bottom panel. And again, there's the length. Release that. Remove it. And now I can groom this hair back and forth. And then the little bits that are like, you know, kind of hanging out and left behind, we can either keep those till later, because I call it don't chase the dust. We might want to play with some of that, but I've got a very soft bottom edge to it, which works well for the mannequin, because obviously we know when we're working on mannequins, when we get into these shorter lengths at the hairline, the hair sits very strong and almost very stubborn. And as far as a balance on it, I'm going to go ahead and technically check it by pulling it out, making sure I'm balanced within my lengths, and then also visually just kind of passing it back and forth with the wide teeth of the comb, making sure that it's sitting softly into the nape, and also just assessing that transfer of weight from the right to the left. So now that that nape section is done, we'll call that a bit undercut. And how I judged how dense or how wide this nape section should be was simply by assessing the density of hair sitting on top, making sure that I had enough hair to create a really nice kind of bob line, but as well as where I wanted to create this line sitting into the lip here, that I was just below, or I'm sorry, just higher than the lip. So this first panel begins to sit up and over, and I can begin to now reference that line to aim toward the lip. So I'm going to spin around a bit. I'm going to start working on this left side. So we'll release the pin. And then now my section angles are just going to mirror really the geometry of this last section here. And because I am working with the razor, we'll work larger sections. Because again, I'm going to be putting in a line as well as taking weight out, all kind of in one lump sum. So I'll be developing my shape as well as the technique with that razor. And if the section is too thin, I can pop through it without really controlling it. So we'll push that back. And there's nothing in the hair. When it comes to blue, we want to work with the hair as natural as possible. We don't want to utilize any kind of like leave-in conditioners. We want to see how the hair naturally responds. Drop that chin position back down ever so slightly. Just kind of groom that bend out of the hair. And then now before I begin, I want to quickly reference for my ending point. So ending point's the lip, knowing that I'm going to have to expose a bit of the lobe of the ear. So this first one's going to be cut quite short. It's going to be roughly about 1.5 inches in length. And that should just begin to naturally sit right up and over that previous section. So what I can do is I can take this and I can pull it back in the exact same way that the previous section was cut, elevating it still slightly as to like if I were to be cutting with a little graduated bob shape. And now I'm assessing the lengths below, making sure that by the time I'm done, that the lengths just happen to sit right up and over those shorter lengths. Remember, that's supposed to have a slight undercut to it. But what it's really designed to do is just to help flatten out the shape of the haircut. And I'm just going to make my way through that. Again, there's the length, there's the texture. Now I'll just begin to wrap that with the wide teeth of the comb, watching it as it naturally begins to bevel in. Just take off any little bits I don't like that I'm seeing right out of the gate. And now we'll continue through with, continue through with the next section. And I couldn't work this straight through, or I can just work the back in one go and then make my way into the sides. So that's really kind of dealer's choice. Today I'm going to work up the back, and then we'll move it into the sides. So we'll pin this away. Spin that head back down. Consistency is key. So now I'm going to take this bit, same thing, directing it down. Now to create a little bit more roundness through the hair, I'm going to start that skimming up a little bit higher, because that's going to just create a little bit more internal kind of like movement and texture through the hair. And then as I begin to hit that same spot where I began to focus that razor to create that line on the previous section, that will be my ending point. So that's done, off. There might be some longer strands still sitting there. If so, I just simply pick it up. There they are. Simply melt them away. Now I can begin to really see this shape begin to develop, as well as I'm beginning to see that line moving forward. Move off, and this might be the last bit. Yeah, there's just enough hair here. So I've done this back really in three sections. And it could be 4, it could be 5, it's just really depending on the density of the hair. This mannequin, it definitely gets a bit more sparse the further I travel up the head. Same thing, pinching it through, taking that razor, sitting it just at the round of the head and begin kind of melting it down. And then as I hit the ending point where that length of the line sits, I'll begin to sit the razor and just kind of focus it within that one area until it just makes its way through the lengths and melts off. That's great. So now as I begin to look forward, for myself, I'm going to bounce back to the right side. And I prefer to do that just to help maintain balance between left and right. If I move on to the side, when I get back into this right side, I'm going to have to take a little more time recollecting or recollecting my thoughts on where my last points of elevation were as I created this back. So I'd rather do it now as everything's really fresh in the mind. And I did this in 3 sections, so I know that I'm going to take this back panel and essentially split it into thirds. So first bit here, again, that section is just mirroring the geometry of that previous line below. Clean that up ever so slightly. There we go. Grooming is key, something we've stressed, kind of just working really nice and tidy. We'll just pin this out of the way. Oop. There we go. So this bit, remember, we're going to take, it's going to be elevated to as if I were cutting a little graduated bob shape, same point of kind of like elevation. I'm going to consolidate it back. So me taking this corner and dragging it back is helping retain that corner, right? So it's helping fill in that negative hole right here. If I wanted to flatten the shape out more so, I could follow the shape around, right? So it's basic foundational principles. So I'm utilizing a little over direction back in that corner to help create the shape, but also fill in kind of the negative space of that corner. Now coming back into the razor, starting slightly higher, just below the round, to begin to round that shape out a little bit more so. And then coming in and focusing now on just releasing off the length. Length, release, sitting it in. Don't worry about the little long stuff. See how easy it's just to pick it up and melt it off. We'll take the next section. So this would be 2 of 3. Take this. And now again, we're going to take it. This corner will be over directed back. We're going to pinch it together. Come just below the round of the head. That's going to help out creating some kind of internal roundness to the shape. That's where I'm going to first begin very, very lightly. Make my way through it. And then begin to decrease down further down the shafts until I hit that point of where the line is to be created. And then I don't want to change the angle of the blade because in this instance, the angle of this razor is what's creating the shape of the haircut. Last bit. You got it. So now I'm going to release this last section down. I'm going to offer a little bit of water to this one section just because it's drying. Oh, cheerio. The water just kind of fell out of the sky to me today. So just a light saturation of the water. I don't want to go too heavily on it because it's important to me that as I work my way through the sections that I see the natural development of the shape and the technique come together. He's on it. Cheers. Thank you, Matthew. So again, this is the third section now. Taking it, and like I say, on this haircut, the grooming is key. So just taking everything, again, now this section here, think about it. If I was cutting a graduated bob, this point of elevation is almost relative of where you would be stopping on that section, now to continue that weight line through. So that's my point of elevation. I got over direction back into these corners, which has helped creating this kind of like transfer of weight forward. And then we'll start the skimming just below the round. So the roundness here is sitting really at the high occipital. If I go too high, obviously I'm going to create little hairs that are going to want to stick up kind of out of the finish of the haircut. So starting lightly, very light skimming just on the outer shell to create some external kind of like movement. And then as I work my blade down, as I begin to hit that ending point, what I'm doing is I'm just really looking below where I see that line. And that's where I begin stopping the skimming as far as dropping it further down the shafts. And now I'm just going to sit on top of the hair until that razor effortlessly makes its way through. And I can definitely come in and utilize a little bit more of the edge to create that line. So simple. Now coming back in with the wide teeth of the cutting comb, utilizing that natural curvature of the skull, just wrapping it in and looking at that shape. So we've got a nice little soft graduated shape sitting through the nape, and now I begin to really see that line begin to transfer forward. So now I'll jump back into the lighter side of the haircut, which is my left. So now taking the head, pushing it off to the right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretty much just continue this line through, aiming toward the lip. Remembering the hair is wet, so it will dry and it will begin to obviously decrease in length as it begins to dry. So if you look at the section line here, it's got a slight angle to it, still living in that kind of horizontal diagonal family. Take this hair, let's take it up and over, groom it and pin it out of the way. Borrow that water, cheerio. A little bit more water through it. So I'm just grooming it back. I'll pick it up. Now, because this one's going to be more the line of the haircut, basic principles of cutting hair, I'm going to play with a lower point of elevation now to begin to build out substance of line, substance of line. If the hair was extremely dense or thick, I could definitely begin cutting through this section with elevation right out of the gate, because that will begin obviously dismissing some of the weight out of the line. So really just understanding the hair that I'm working on. And then again, those kind of foundational principles of what obviously elevation over direction, will do for my shape development, my technique. So here's my length guide right here, sitting at that mastoid region, right? So I can hold that in hand and just let it slip out. Now I'm going to decrease the elevation, begin to sit that razor. Again, a shorter stroke because I am looking to create more so a line. Again, don't chase the dust. There's the line. Get rid of that hair. Groom it back and forth. Now just begin to assess where that's moving toward. Let's bring it. So once it's done and groomed, I should have a nice little line pointing right toward the lip. So we'll come back in. And this section will most likely be cut in, I would think, 3 sections as well. It's not a lot of hair to get through. So it's a very quick little shape. All hair cutting does not need to be complex. In fact, I think as I've moved on within my career, I've gone back to looking for very kind of simple, quick ways and how to execute, a multitude of haircuts. My past is I come from owning a salon for 23 years. And in owning the salon, obviously I understand the workflow of the stylist behind the chair, that you need quick, successful tools in order to make your way through the service. So I think really understanding strong principles about the foundations of cutting hair really unleashes and unlocks all the creativity you need to quickly make, judgment calls behind the chair. In order to accomplish, we'll call it a simple yet modern shape for the clients. I'm going to do one thing and I'm going to change this razor very quickly. I feel like the last section, the razor started having a little bit of kind of pull on the hair. So we'll just change that blade out. And to always kind of safely do that, I take the spine of the comb, just push that razor out. And this is a guarded razor, so it shouldn't cut me. And then what I do, because I don't have those little trashings, I'll take the razor and I'll put it upside down in the refill pack, and then I'll take the new blade, just slip it in, and then flip it over, push it in. Simple enough. And we get back to work. I'll take a little bit more water. Cheers. So now this section, I'm going to play with a little bit more elevation. That's going to create a little bit more roundness through the line. So you can see I'm elevating it up ever so slightly. It's almost like what we'd call, really when I think about cutting classic graduation, which I'll be doing this afternoon, the elevations, the principles are relatively the same. It's just a different tool and a different approach in going into it. Now, if I wanted to take more weight out, I'm going to go higher up. If I wanted to keep a little bit more weight into the edge, as well as just create kind of like natural roundness, I'm going to take it down and bring that blade down a bit lower. So working with a really elevated arm position, it's a little unnatural, but I'm doing that so the camera can kind of feed underneath my arm. And again, that razor position is mimicking really the line that I'm looking to create. There's the length, there's the texture that we're creating. Before I move on, always take the wide teeth of the comb, groom it back. Again, just to look at this little bob shape we're creating. So got this nice line moving forward. And we'll take this last bit. This last bit is very little hair, and some of that will go into a little bit like a side fringe, but we'll do that at the very, very end. A little bit of water. Water is key when you're using the razor. You don't want to be razoring on dry hair unless you're just doing a little detail work, because it can definitely begin to shred the cuticle layer. So I'm going to go slightly higher on this one to pull a little bit more weight through that top layer of the hair. So you can see I'm sitting that razor still just below the round of the head, pulling out some kind of external weight. Now we'll release it. And now since that's that last bit here, just assessing shape, I'm going to pick it up one lump sum. Now I'm going to look at all the little bits that were left behind. We'll call it the dust. It'll be much easier for me to chase this dust off. I can come in with the tips of the scissor and get it off. Or if I've got a very controlled technique, I can let it slip out utilizing great tension on the fingers and just begin to take that little bit out. There we go. Thing is, a lot of times if people come in with the scissor and they begin utilizing the tip of the scissor to chase the dust off, I notice that they really begin to kind of chase the texture of the razor off, and they begin almost blunting it out. So that I don't want to forget what I was doing. Like, the idea is for it to be soft and to have this kind of really kind of ethereal, effortless feeling through the bottom edges of the haircut. That's the reason why I'm using the razor. Cool. And now we'll come back in and repeat on the opposite side, referencing that corner of the lip. That little shape progression is looking soft and nice. Some people may call this a little variance of like a, could be a little French bob, Amelie, I don't know. To me, it's graduation with a line, because that's the way my brain works. I got graduation underneath and I'm putting a line on top of it, playing with a little bit of disconnection. So head position is now to the opposing side. So I'm working on the right, the head is tilted to the left. I'm going to come back in and just lightly hydrate this whole top layer of hair. There we go. Pass that back. And now we did 3 sections on the opposing side. I should be able to get through this and possibly 4. Slightly more hair because this is the heavier side. Now you might ask, could you do this with a center part? If you're going to wear a strong fringe, I would absolutely say yes. If you weren't going to use a strong fringe and there was going to be no fringe involved, you got to think about, you're going to have a lot of hair falling right down into the face, and it could possibly close down the face. So I think this is best suited for a side part, but that goes back into the whole conversation of suitability and who am I to tell you what's beautiful, right? Suitability is definitely different to each and every one, and it really takes on the individual of the persona of the individual that you're working upon. So I've got my section line. Now remembering what I'd done, this first section was cut at a lower elevation, wasn't it? To create that line through. Utilizing just a bit of this previous section at the mastoid. That is going to be obviously my Length guide, so pulling it back, pinching it down. This side will appear slightly longer. Reason being is we are working with an offset part. So coming back in, and we just focused really on creating the line. So it was a low elevation and a very kind of light stroke of the razor up and down to create the line. Release that hair. I think I've got a little bit more length through the front. So I'm going to come back in and just chase that off right here. So I'm just going to take this bit off here. So I'm going to have to use a very controlled muscle within the fingers just to hold that last bit. So picking it up. I've got a very strong, firm tension. So I'm rolling these fingers on top of one another to help out and hold that hair. And then I can come just behind it and chase that last bit off. If I've got any little bits, maybe something right here in the center. You want to chase dust with me? This is what chasing dust looks like. Now we've chased it and we can move on. So now we're going to go ahead and continue up the side, always grooming the hair. I'm a huge fan of this in the salon. It allows your client to see the shape and the technique that you're beginning to develop, because as you cut, and some people will just kind of bat the hair around, one, you're not getting a really clean line of sight on obviously the work that you're creating and or producing, but neither does your client. A lot of times it's just about having that individual feel as comfortable as possible throughout the entire duration of the service. So effortless grooming, making sure that the entire aspect of the service is one that is surrounded around beauty, not just the end result, right? I always say that clients come into the salon with one kind of motive in mind, and that is to walk out hoping to walk out looking and feeling more beautiful, right? So my kind of thought process is the entire service should be one that emulates beauty. That's from the way that they're treated, the way the hair is being groomed, from the shampoo, the way you're speaking to them. I was just talking to a colleague of mine yesterday just about those kind of ideals and principles. And unfortunately, I think those are the things that people begin to overlook and forget as we are working behind the chair. I know I'm guilty of it. You service somebody for multiple years. You might have a day where you're running behind, and all of a sudden it's go back, get changed, get shampooed, I'll meet you back at the chair. You forgot to even like greet them properly, shake their hand, check up on them, seeing how their last 4 to 6 weeks may have been, their life, their past haircut, their past color, how the products they've been utilizing have been working for them. So you got to take the opportunity and be really thankful for every time that your client comes in, whether it's a first-time client or a 20-year, 10-year, 30-year client, that you treat them as it's their first time in. Just think about yourself. If you were paying for a service somewhere, wouldn't you want the consistency to be there? I'm sure we've all gone to a restaurant where, hey, she's getting crazy on me. There we go. Gone to a restaurant where the service was impeccable the first time. Second time around is, maybe falling off a little bit. Maybe the third time the waiter or the waitress remembers you. So now the service is even kind of like gone down even that much more so, because they have this familiarity with you. Call it comfort. So just these are things that, I think are harder to kind of keep in practice. So picking up this next bit, pinching it together. I'll chase that hair off in just a minute. So taking that razor up, skimming it up ever so slightly, create a little bit more roundness through it. And when you work with the flat of the razor like this, I will say that I feel like it definitely takes the edge off the razor a bit quicker than if I'm just utilizing maybe the edge or the tip or the back heel of the razor, creating more edge work. So I say you need to change the blade whenever you feel like it needs to be changed. That could be one time, that could be 2 times, that could be 3 times through a haircut. The blades are cheap. Your clients deserve a fresh blade, because utilizing a dull blade obviously is just going to chew the hair up. So I've got one more section to go. We'll flop this, see what falls over. Remember kind of that 90s supermodel vibe, got a bit of like an old Linda Evangelista on a mannequin head. That's what we were shooting for, but trying to make it still a little bit more modern. So this last bit, elevating it up even a bit more so. Pinching it together. Round of the head, starting it below the round of the head, ever so slightly. Make my way through. Just take that off. And this haircut, honestly, like if I were to do this in the salon, it'd take me probably like 10 minutes to get through. It doesn't need to take an hour every time. You know, there's been this whole thing like clients don't have to be paying for my time. They're paying you also for your knowledge and experience. So what may take somebody an hour could take the next person, 10 to 15 minutes. And it shouldn't be that they're being charged less and or more. It's just about the knowledge and the expertise of that individual that is working on you. So wrapping this back, that's looking good. So before I move on, I'm going to chase a little bit of weight out through this back corner. I see something here that it's not really sitting with me well, so I can come back in, just use the tip of the razor just to break that up. She is shaky. Lock her down nice and tight. There we go. And here we are. Just chase that out. Just giving it a little bit of space, just utilizing the tip of the razor to break that up. And I could do that once the hair is dry, and I have the ability to see the hair in its true form once it's been dried with a little bit of product, or I could definitely just take care of that now. So now I'm just going to come back in and open the face up. So I've got my heavy side. I definitely have a light side. You can definitely see a little bit of the asymmetry now because of the counterbalance between the side part. Thanks. And then we'll put a little bit of a blow dry on it, some products. We'll see what we can make of her. Simple little shape. So head position, I'm going to drop backwards just for my own line of sight. She's got me so scared now. She's just going to pop off, so I'm going to lock her down. And I am going to work off that natural part just with some small little triangular pieces. And what I'm going to do is just cut a bit of a short to long fringe section. May this be even considered like, a soft little side layer. Just depends on what you want to call it. So I'm going to take it. I'm now pulling it almost like perpendicular to that section line. Section's here. My direction point and where I'm dragging it is here. Obviously, that's going to help create that short to long kind of feeling. I'm going to pinch it together. And I want this to be soft. So I'm going to sit that blade on it, but just begin pulling out a lot of that weight. Just effortlessly melt its way through. Ever so simple and light. Just something to help push it open. Take this next little bit. And I can go back as far as I like. It just, again, it's dependent on how much I want to see kind of falling down into the face. I want to keep it light, so I'm only going to go really these two sections back. So focusing that same point, same depth up within the skimming. Just release that down. And now that I've got the overall length in there, I can definitely pick this up and create a little bit more space, highs and lows. So I'll come back in, just utilizing the tip of the razor, just kind of notching out little pieces. And as we know, short hair pushes long hair. So that short hair, I went short and gradually got longer. That internal texture will just help push this and support it out of the way. We'll do just a little bit on the opposing side just to balance it out. And it doesn't need to be like a technical balance. It can just be like another random little short bit. Hair does not need to be like Perfect, matchy, side to side. I think most hair looks best when it's a little bit off. I'll call it wabi-sabi. Cool. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to hit this with a quick blow dry, and then we'll take a look at the shape and we'll see what we can do with it. So I'm going to bring her chin up. There she is. Blow dry should go quite quick because the hair is primarily already dry. Got some good texture already running its way through there. So product to bring out a little bit of texture within the hair from Blue. Going to moisten it with a little bit of water. First reason is to obviously balance out the moisture saturation. So as I come back in with my styling products, everything adheres evenly. If I have different moisture levels living in the hair, the product is going to take differently from obviously moisture level to moisture level. So do I want more body through the hair? I don't think so. I'm not really looking to build out more fullness. I'm already a little bit afraid this hair's gotten so short on a mannequin that it's going to sit a little bit round. I'm thinking I might want to collapse it out. So if I was looking for more fullness or thickness into the root area, if this was like somebody with finer hair, one of my favorite products from Blue is the Magnifier Thickening Spray. And what I would do with this, I would give it a good shake, find the pump, and then I'd come right into the root and I'd pump it literally about 2 to 3 inches off the root and just focus in right at that root, because what that's going to do is it's going to just create a lot of natural lift, and it's got a very kind of like dry feeling to it. Some of these kind of like thickening sprays, I feel like almost leave an oilier residue into that root area. This is really nice and light, but it begin just to give me some additional lift. So again, I'm not looking for really lift. I'm looking for just a bit more texture out of the hair. So I think I'm going to come in with a little bit of the Surreal Styling Serum, and that is in the reparative line. So this is going to come out in a little bit more of like a gel consistency, just a little bit. And we'll take that, really work it through the hands. And then I'm going to take my hands like open like a rake and just begin raking it through. I want to make sure that I get that everywhere. And when you watch Garen do hair and the amount of product he uses, very, very little product to get the end result. If you were relying on product to create the shape and the texture, my feeling is that the shape and the texture is really not in place within the haircut. The product should just give it that added support. You should have the ability to almost get up and underneath it with just the moisture levels within the hair and the light product and begin to style it how you'd like to see it, and have enough of that internal movement if you're cutting something with texture, and having its ability to hold itself. So wipe off the hands. And the one thing I will do is I'm going to add just a little bit of optical illusion oil. This is a very light oil. So 2 pumps right into the hand. Obviously, it's going to smooth the hair. It's going to offer some more shine to the hair. But like any oil, it's going to offer a slight amount of weight. So I'm going to actually utilize that back into the bottom nape, where I really want to make sure that this collapses out. So pushing that into the nape, and then just to make sure that I've got consistency within sheen, I'm just going to kind of pull that through some of the mid shafts in the ends on the top and the sides. Great. Now blow dryer. So I got my blow dryer with high heat, high fan speed. I'm going to look for my nozzle attachment because I will be needing that. Before I get in there with a brush or anything, I'm just going to begin to utilize the blow dryer in a kind of a rotating round motion and just do what we call a little bit of a toss dry on it. Because again, I want the haircut to be kind of playful, not overly fixed. So I may actually successfully make my way through the blow dry without actually putting a brush through the hair and enjoy the end result. There's no need for the hair to be forced. So high heat, high fan speed, just using that airflow to begin to brush the root, drying that root, pushing the movement into the haircut in place. I think it'd be nice with some of the softness moving forward. If it comes straight down and flat, I feel like it can look a little bit stale and just kind of too hard. Dry down that nape. And I think hair has been so overly done for the last decade, just like forced with round brushes and curling irons, that if you can really get back into hand styling and showing your clients that they can successfully hand style their hair and not have to, force it with a brush, round brush, flat brush, curling iron to achieve a different result, a new result, they're going to be ecstatic with you. So again, moving this hair forward, a short circular motion. Really kind of focusing into that root. Again, I'm always thinking, like if I began to take in the blow dryer, blow drying this hair up and over the shape of the head, it's going to fill it out. It's going to make it obviously fuller and rounder than I wish. So I'm looking really to kind of keep that shape collapsed. So everything through the sides, from the frontal region down, I'm kind of pushing forward for that movement. But when I get into the top, I'm more or less just kind of dragging it down and beginning to flatten out the shape even more so. I can use my fingers to stretch the hair, straighten it out, and also begin to create some bend in it. Any questions out there? Like I say, I'll get back to you. I don't have the ability to see the screen, so I'll check out the video after the fact, 15, 20 minutes or so, and then I can receive or I'll answer back any questions that may have come up. I'm wanting a little bit of bend in these longer lengths, so high heat, just rolling them up and over my fingers. Allow that to begin to cool. Let that set up. And now that I've got pretty much most of the moisture out, I can come back in and look at if I do want to offer a little bit more shine or possibly to collapse the shape out even more so, I can come in with a brush. That's going to help close down the cuticle layer. And if I'm wanting to obviously keep the shape collapsed, I'm just going to keep everything really compact to the scalp area. I'm not going to do a lot of wrapping back and forth. So I can come back in with a traditional vest style brush, or I could even utilize just like the tight teeth of a cutting comb and begin to really kind of like flatten that out. But I'll also put the nozzle on the blow dryer. And this seems to be like one time going through, it just instantly brings out the finish even more so. So it's a very simple little shape that we've created today. Done it within 1, 2, 3 panels. We utilized the stick razor, the guarded razor, however you want to call it, just in a really kind of flat blade skimming motion, utilizing a little bit more of a condensed kind of cutting technique, which, you know, I'm not opposed to. My background is very disciplined and very structured, so sometimes it's really fun just to kind of get loose, work with larger sections. And it's all about just knowing your canvas and what you're looking to create. Shake that up. Cool. Simple. There we go. She's dry. And before we finish and add an additional product, I'm going to come through with the scissor. And so I got scissor. And then what I'll do is I'm going to come back in just to the top interior. I'm going to pull this hair up just to offer a little bit more layering through it, as well as if I've got any really kind of long scraggly hairs chasing off a corner. That's going to help just kind of offer a little bit more movement through the top edge. As well as, like I say, if I find pieces that look like this, that are just kind of like a lone ranger, if you will, hanging out, we can chase that off, because a lot of times when clients get a razored haircut and they go to put their hands in their hair, and all of a sudden they get to the edges and they feel those little kind of micro pieces, it can freak them out because the hair feels like it's really kind of like stringy, especially if they're pulling irons through it like these things. So we're just giving it a little bit more substance. Those pieces will just eventually break, and then chasing off that little bit of a corner. Little bits there, so we'll chase that out. Beauty. Cool. Cool. And then you can go around the perimeter line if you'd like. And you can utilize it, the scissors, just to detail this out. Like I said, I want to keep this really kind of soft and broken. That's what I think works best on the mannequin heads at times, especially something like this. So staying true to that, so just going straight in with the tips of the scissors, just kind of creating additional negative space for it to kind of breathe and move. So very little with the scissor. Keep that comb. And then I'm going to come back in with a last product. We've got quite a few we can choose from. Bring out more texture in the hair. The Elastique Styling Pomade is definitely a contender, maybe a little bit of pomade. But as you know, some pomades, when you put it in the hair, can actually begin to make the hair feel a little bit more dense and a little bit more thick. This has got a very light cream consistency to it. So it's not one that's going to make the hair obviously extremely kind of like thick and mattified. It's going to be a little bit more workable. So I think that the Elastique Pomade is a good go. So in the hands really, really well. And I'm going to make sure she's really locked into place for this, so her head doesn't go flying off as I want to rake my hands through. So as I come in now with the pomade, very light on the hands, I'm just going to lightly begin to go through and begin to kind of like dust it into the edges. Because I know if I push it into the root area, I can definitely begin to create a bit more expansiveness. So it's very kind of light, and this looks almost like batting it back and forth within my fingers. And then just begin to like play with the shape, moving it around, not getting so fixated on one idea or one principle. Because again, these types of ideas and shapes are really meant to be really kind of like natural and lived in. And if you ever really look at Garen's work, it's always about pushing the boundaries and really like on an editorial level. And you want to be able to come back up in, maneuver the hair, manipulate it, push it into, you know, a new shape, take it, transform it. And that's one of the, you know, most brilliant things surrounding Blue is it's truly like an editorial line where you can simply build the hair up, break it back down, build it up, break it down, like any like great kind of like, you know, kind of session kind of like spray. So utilizing that pomade just to give me some different highs and lows within it. We always have to look past the fact, you know, that it is a mannequin because sometimes, you know, the hair sits very wiggy the shorter it gets. Always just kind of playing with techniques, never really teaching a haircut. These are all just kind of ideas. This is a little bit of Featherlight hairspray. Featherlight is going to be our lightest, most workable hairspray within the line. So I'm going to come back in with Featherlight, just begin detailing out little pieces, giving her a little bit of separation, some movement. And then as I come back in, I kind of work my way around it and walk around it, looking at the overall profile shape and just assessing, you know, if I'm liking where this is going. So haircutting doesn't need to be complex. It should actually be simple. And, you know, quick changes on clients don't need to take, you know, 2 hours to do. Having a simple practice in place and understanding your kind of foundational principles to offer these kind of quick changes, I think, is what can make you a really great hairdresser. And where you find that information out is by showing up to classes and continually just developing your confidence within yourself and understanding obviously these principles. So, and then the rest of it is just really styling and however you would like to see it. There's no right, there's no wrong. This is art, so it's all about you. And before we close, I just want to pull this back for a minute. We just have done a simple little shape, really loose. It's kind of playful. Modern little graduated shape, utilizing the razor, collapsing this in. It's got a slight disconnect between the lengths on the top to what's going on underneath. That's going to help to slim it out, as well as it's going to help allow them building out some expansion through the shape in the back. The nape area was just all kind of cut in a condensed section where we pulled that section back together once it was split in two and just skimmed it over with the razor, the flat of the razor, just kind of melting it in to the nape. Then we began to pull the additional sections above it, almost elevating it out like a traditional little graduated bob, but just skimmed it right up and over, then began to converge it into the sides, moving the line into the sides, kind of focusing it into the lip. As we worked that razor, I began to go higher into the shafts of the hair to begin to collapse out some weight, giving it a little bit more movement and offering a little bit more roundness. We utilized obviously blue to finish the hair. We utilized a little bit of the Surreal Styling Serum, which comes out like a gel. It goes into the hair like a liquid. It breaks down very, very easily. And it's going to offer memory, shine, support, and a bit of structure to the hair. And then we came back after that fact with a little optical illusion oil for a bit of additional weight, added polish and shine. After the blow dry, we began to finish it off and playing with some of the internal texture with the Elastique Styling Pomade, very simple, creamy pomade, and then a little bit of Featherlight hairspray just to piece it out. But I highly encourage you to check out Aronco. If you go to our website, which would be aronco.com, you can go to the Blue tab. You can find out a little bit more surrounding the brand, the philosophies, the expansiveness of the brand, which is not very expansive, meaning I think it's only about 26 products altogether. And like I say, it's a system, and it's a system that's really kind of catered towards rebuilding the hair from the inside out by utilizing a cutting edge technology, which is a blue molecule, which is pushed into the hair utilizing a sugarcane capsule. So there's some definite like science behind it, but it rebuilds the hair from the inside out. And I encourage you all to follow us, follow along on our R&Co education journey. You can go to Instagram and follow R&Co EDU, our R&Co page, R&Co Blue, our Facebook page, R&Co, and then my own personal page, which is Federico Advanced on Instagram. And again, a big shout out to our friends at Hairbrain for opening the platform and sharing with us today. And wishing you all a lovely holiday season and sending you all peace and a little bit of love. Cheers.